Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join us as we explore the rugged landscapes, uncover hidden historical gems, and dive deep into the rich legends and culture of this iconic region. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on the latest desert adventures. Please leave a like or comment. This is very helpful. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Welcome to Southwest Desert, the channel where we resurrect forgotten stories from America's Southwest past. I'm your host, Alan. Today, we're standing amid concrete ruins and crumbling stone walls. The desert wind whispers through empty door frames where bank vaults once held millions in gold deposits. This is Rhyolite, Nevada, perhaps the most perfect example of boom and bust in American history. A city that went from barren desert to a metropolis of 6,000 souls and back to dust, all in less than 2 decades. Imagine this. In 1904, this empty patch of Nevada desert didn't exist on any map. 3 years later, it was home to 3 railroads, 4 newspapers, over 30 saloons, and had electric lights before parts of San Francisco. Within another decade, it would be completely abandoned, with only a single resident, described in records only as a solitary Frenchman, remaining among the ruins. How does a city rise and fall so dramatically? What fever gripped the men and women who built their dreams here? And what lessons does Rhyolite hold for us today about the nature of ambition, speculation, and the American pursuit of fortune? Stay with us as we uncover the glittering rise and spectacular collapse of Nevada's most famous ghost town. The story of Rhyolite begins like many Western gold rush tales, with a lucky prospector and a fortuitous discovery. But the setting was uniquely forbidding. The Bullfrog Hills region sits near what we now know as Death Valley, one of the hottest, driest places on the North American continent. It was August 1904. The recent strikes at Tonopah and Goldfield had prospectors combing every inch of Nevada's seemingly endless desert landscape. Among them were 2 seasoned desert rats, Frank "Shorty" Harris and Eddie Cross. Harris would later describe the moment he found the greenish quartz that would change everything. The rock was green, almost like turquoise, spotted with big chunks of yellow metal, and looked good enough to eat. That distinctive green coloration reminded the men of a bullfrog's back, inspiring them to name their claim Bullfrog Mine, an ironic choice given the parched landscape where no self-respecting amphibian would ever make its home. News traveled fast, despite the remote location. By fall 1904, hundreds of prospectors and fortune seekers had descended on the area, staking claims across the territory between the original Bullfrog Mine and the life-giving waters of the Amargosa River. The initial settlements were rudimentary, even primitive. Beatty sprang up near the Amargosa River, while Amargosa City offered the basics: saloons, stores, and an unofficial post office. Several paper towns were platted, existing more as investment schemes than actual communities. But it was a prospector named Pete Bush who staked the claim that would become Rhyolite itself, choosing a location among the most promising mines. The name Rhyolite comes from the volcanic rock prevalent in the area. By February 1905, Bush was offering free lots to encourage development, and fortune seekers began abandoning the makeshift canvas towns to build more permanent structures in Rhyolite. The migration to the new boomtown accelerated under the rallying cry, "Bullfrog or bust." The journey to this remote outpost showcased American ingenuity and determination. Some came on foot, others led burro trains loaded with supplies. Those with means arrived by saddle horse, while families packed into light rigs. Mule-driven freight wagons groaned under massive loads of lumber and provisions. Some enterprising souls even mounted entire houses on wagons. The wealthy could purchase automobile transport from Goldfield, a luxury that cost $25, the equivalent of over $800 today. By spring 1905, Rhyolite was a city of canvas. Tents housed everything from butcher shops to banks, bakeries to drugstores. Accommodations were basic but functional. Tent inns featured wooden frames with canvas walls and simple wooden floors. A night's lodging in a two-cot room cost $1, roughly $33 in today's currency. Communication with the outside world was established with remarkable speed. On May 5, 1905, the Rhyolite Herald published its first edition, and a post office opened just 2 weeks later. The boom was legitimized, and now the real money would start flowing in. And flow it did. National investors, including Charles Schwab, the steel magnate, not the modern broker, arrived to capitalize on the district's potential. Schwab purchased the Montgomery Shoshone mine and funded construction of a 200-ton mill to process ore. Stock promotions raised massive capital for mining development, much of it from Eastern investors who had never set foot in Nevada. Infrastructure development accelerated at a staggering pace. Mule and horse teams hauled supplies from Las Vegas. Lumber cut from Mount Charleston made its way across the desert to feed the construction boom. Auto and horse stages carried a constant stream of passengers and mail. By early 1906, tents were giving way to more substantial structures, wood frame buildings and impressive stone edifices. Property values soared as credit flowed freely. Telephone lines and telegraph wires connected this remote outpost to the wider world. The minds driving this development carried names that reflected the optimism of the era: the original Bullfrog, the Denver, Montgomery Shoshone, Tramp, National Bank, and Steinway. Despite the San Francisco earthquake in April 1906 disrupting financial markets, Rhyolite continued its meteoric rise. The richest ores were freighted to mills in Goldfield, while some shipments made the long journey to Las Vegas and onward to smelters in Salt Lake City. Transportation bottlenecks eased when the Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad reached the district in November 1906. By mid-1907, the Bullfrog Goldfield Railroad had begun operations, with the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad arriving just 3 months later. Imagine that, 3 competing railroads serving what had been empty desert just 3 years earlier. 1907 marked the apex of Rhyolite's prosperity. The population swelled to an estimated 6,000 souls. The streets buzzed with activity as brokers, saloon keepers, cafe owners, and real estate agents competed for business. Newsboys hawked papers from Denver, San Francisco, and Salt Lake City on street corners. The city offered diversions for every taste. A red light district staffed by women from San Francisco's famous Barbary Coast catered to miners' baser instincts, while churches served their spiritual needs. Modern amenities included bottling works, ice plants, and a sophisticated telephone exchange. Cultural life thrived with an opera house and even a symphony orchestra. The publishing industry boomed with 4 competing newspapers and 2 locally printed magazines. The Porter Brothers store reportedly grossed $150,000 monthly in general merchandise, equivalent to over $4.7 million today. But the golden dream wouldn't last. The national financial panic of late 1907 struck Rhyolite with particular force. Smaller mines began closing as development work slowed to a crawl. Wall Street money and credit, the lifeblood of speculation, dried up almost overnight. The population decline was as dramatic as the boom had been. The school that had symbolized Rhyolite's permanence now operated at just 25% capacity. By the 1910 census, only 675 residents remained. 12 years later, in 1922, a single solitary Frenchman was recorded as the town's only inhabitant. The mining district's total recorded production amounted to 3 million, substantial for the era, but far below the extravagant expectations that had fueled Rhyolite's explosive growth. 12 mines had produced commercial ore, but none had yielded the sustained riches promised in stock promotions. Today, visitors to Rhyolite encounter an eerie landscape of ruins. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad Depot, which cost $90,000 to build, almost $3 million in modern currency, still stands, having served various purposes over the decades, including a casino. Currently, it houses a residence and souvenir shop. Perhaps the most distinctive remaining structure is the famous Bottle House, constructed from thousands of discarded beer bottles, an early example of desert recycling and a testament to both the miners' thirst and their ingenuity. Golden Street, once the town's bustling main thoroughfare, is now reduced to stone and concrete ruins. Abandoned railroad grades still lead to the mine sites that prompted this remarkable chapter in American history. Today's ghost town tourists wander among these ruins, capturing photographs of stone walls framing empty desert vistas. But they're walking through what was once someone's American dream, a community of ambition, hope, and ultimately, impermanence. Welcome to Southwest Desert, the channel that unearths the buried stories of America's Southwest historic towns. I'm your host, Alan. Today, we're traveling to a small corner of Nevada where fortune hunters once sifted through gravel hoping to change their lives forever. It's a place where Chinese immigrants toiled alongside rugged pioneers, where mills thundered day and night crushing ore, and where the fortunes of an entire community rose and fell with the glitter of gold. Join us as we explore Dayton, Nevada, the unlikely settlement that survived boom, bust, and fire to become one of America's most authentic gold rush towns. Imagine standing on the banks of the Carson River in 1849. The California gold rush is in full swing, and thousands of eager immigrants are pushing westward, their covered wagons groaning under the weight of supplies. A handful of those travelers pause here, at the mouth of Gold Canyon, about 12 miles northeast of what will later become Carson City. They're thirsty, their oxen are tired, and as they bend to scoop water from the river, something catches their eye: flecks of yellow in the gravelly soil. Those tiny specks would transform this quiet riverside spot into Nevada's first gold mining settlement. But unlike its more famous counterpart, Virginia City, Dayton wouldn't explode overnight into a raucous boom town. Instead, it would evolve through waves of prosperity and abandonment, shaped by the fortunes of nearby strikes and the perseverance of those who called it home. The earliest incarnation of Dayton wasn't much to look at, just a seasonal tent trading post catering to immigrants on the final leg of their journey west. Merchants would set up shop during the summer months, selling supplies at premium prices to desperate travelers, then pack up and head elsewhere for winter. But gold has a way of putting down roots. By the early 1850s, the first permanent building appeared, and a small year-round community began to take shape. These frontier entrepreneurs weren't just mining gold, they were mining the miners, providing essential services to those working claims in Gold Canyon. What's fascinating is that many of these early miners were Chinese immigrants who had initially sought their fortunes in California. By 1857, their presence was so significant that the settlement earned its first unofficial name, Chinatown. These Chinese miners often worked claims abandoned by others, using traditional placer mining techniques to extract gold that less patient or skilled miners had missed. Life in this early settlement was harsh. Winter winds swept down from the Sierra Nevada mountains. Summer brought scorching heat and dust. Water was precious, and competition for good claims could turn violent. Yet a community persisted, drawn together by the shared pursuit of prosperity in this inhospitable landscape. The precarious nature of frontier settlements became evident in 1859 when the remarkable Comstock lode was discovered just 7 miles north. Almost overnight, buildings were literally picked up and moved to the new strike. Entire businesses relocated, leaving behind only the most committed residents. Sir Richard Burton, the famous British explorer, passed through in 1860 and described what remained as a line of ranches and frame houses forming a kind of length without breadth place with a dreary and grim evening atmosphere. Not exactly a ringing endorsement for potential settlers, yet Dayton refused to become just another ghost town. By late 1861, an unexpected reversal of fortune was underway. The population surged back to several hundred as new settlers recognized Dayton's strategic location. Situated between the Comstock mines and the outside world, Dayton was perfectly positioned to serve as a transshipment hub. This revival brought formal recognition. The community shed its Chinatown moniker and was officially renamed Dayton. More significantly, when Nevada Territory organized its counties, Dayton was selected as the seat of Lyon County, a considerable honor that brought governmental infrastructure and prestige. A post office was established in January 1862, and a Pony Express station operated on the eastern edge of town, connecting this frontier outpost to the wider world. Meanwhile, a rival settlement called Mineral Rapids, immediately to the east, was absorbed into the growing town. Dayton was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. The economic engine driving Dayton's growth wasn't just gold mining but ore processing. The first major quartz mill was constructed in 1861, and others quickly followed. These mills were technological marvels of their time, using massive stamps to crush ore and complex chemical processes to extract precious metals. The Carson River provided both the water needed for processing and the power to drive the machinery. By 1865, Dayton had reached its peak development with a population of 2,500 residents. Contemporary accounts described it as a neatly built, friendly mining town. A 200-foot bridge spanned the Carson River, connecting Dayton to settlements south of the water. Main Street bustled with diverse businesses, including storehouses, restaurants, and even a German brewery. For a frontier town, Dayton offered surprising comforts and amenities. But mining towns rarely enjoy stable prosperity, and Dayton was no exception. After 1865, the population began to decline as easily accessible gold became scarcer. Yet unlike many boom and bust towns that simply disappeared, Dayton adapted and endured. A second renaissance came between 1872 and 1878, driven by increased Comstock mining activities and the construction of the Sutro Tunnel, an ambitious engineering project aimed at draining water from deep mine shafts. During this period, 12 mills operated in the Dayton vicinity with a combined capacity of 180 stamps, thundering day and night as they crushed ore into powder. This renewed prosperity allowed for civic improvements, including a stone schoolhouse that became a point of pride for residents. This wasn't just any frontier school. It featured comprehensive blackboard installations, decorative mottos and pictures, comfortable floor matting, and even flowers and vines growing in the windows. Such attention to educational facilities speaks volumes about the community's values and aspirations. As the Comstock mines declined after 1878, Dayton contracted once again. Yet the arrival of the Carson and Colorado Railroad in 1881 positioned the town for future opportunities, even if immediate benefits were limited. Throughout the early 20th century, Dayton's population fluctuated, sometimes reaching 700 residents as mining and railroad activities ebbed and flowed. Dayton faced perhaps its greatest challenge in 1909 when fire engulfed the courthouse. This disaster, coupled with shifting regional dynamics, led to the county seat being relocated to Yerington in 1911, a significant blow to Dayton's prestige and administrative importance. Yet even this setback couldn't extinguish the town's resilience. Between 1920 and 1923, the Gold Canyon Dredging Company launched a new mining effort using floating dredge technology to process 3 million yards of gravel and recover over $300,000 in gold, a substantial sum for the time. The operation eventually shut down when massive boulders interfered with the dredging and created water management issues for the dredge pond. The final chapter in Dayton's commercial mining history came between 1939 and 1943, when two companies conducted placer operations that left behind an immense rock pile in North Dayton, ironically, right at the site of the original 1850 gold discovery. World War II effectively ended these operations, bringing Dayton's gold mining era to a close after nearly a century. Today's Dayton bears little resemblance to the bustling mining hub of the 1870s. With approximately 400 residents at the time of our historical record, it's a quiet community where the past remains remarkably present. Numerous original buildings have survived, offering a tangible connection to the town's gold rush heritage. Mill ruins dot the landscape, silent witnesses to the industrial activity that once defined this place. What makes Dayton truly special is its authenticity. Unlike many historic mining towns that have been heavily commercialized or reconstructed, Dayton retains its unspoiled character. The absence of inappropriate development has preserved its historical integrity, making it an invaluable window into Nevada's economic history. If you would like to contribute to my channel, join my Patreon community and discover my art print products on my website in the links provided in my description. Also, if you would like a particular image from my videos, give the timestamp for the image, and I will upload it to my website and Patreon. Thank you. Imagine standing in the scorching Arizona desert, 19 miles north of present-day Wickenburg. The year is 1898, and the air is thick with tension. A single spark ignites in the dry wooden structure of the Red Front Saloon. Within minutes, flames engulf the building. There's no fire department, and the only water source in town is a single spigot at the company store, where residents fill 50-gallon whiskey barrels and drag them uphill and down through the canyon settlement. The fire spreads rapidly, consuming businesses, homes, and dreams. Welcome to Congress, Arizona, one of the West's most fascinating and forgotten gold mining towns, where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. The story of Congress begins where all good mining tales do, with discovery. On March 25, 1884, a prospector named Dennis May staked a claim in the rugged terrain of what would become Yavapai County in the Arizona Territory. What he found wasn't just gold, it was a potential bonanza. But like many prospectors of his era, May lacked the capital to develop his claim into a productive mine. Enter Diamond Joe Reynolds, a wealthy Eastern financier with a nose for opportunity. In 1887, Reynolds acquired May's claim and immediately began pouring money into developing what would become the Congress mine. Reynolds had made his fortune in transportation and had the resources to transform a promising hole in the ground into a functioning gold operation. The geography itself presented immediate challenges. Located along a canyon in Arizona's mineral-rich belt, the site offered geological promise but practical problems. The arid desert environment made water, essential for both mining operations and human survival, scarce and precious. The region's punishing heat and remote location meant that building a mining operation here would require extraordinary commitment. Despite these challenges, Reynolds forged ahead, establishing not just a mine but the beginnings of a community. On January 19, 1889, a post office was established under the name Congress, marking the settlement's official recognition. For the next half-century, this postal station would serve as a vital communication link between this remote outpost and the wider world. Reynolds' vision for Congress seemed unlimited, but fate had other plans. In 1891, Diamond Joe died, throwing the mine's future into uncertainty. Operations ceased, and for 3 years the fledgling settlement languished in a state of suspended animation, with only caretaking operations maintaining the infrastructure Reynolds had built. The town might have become just another abandoned claim in the Arizona desert if not for the arrival of a new ownership consortium in 1894. 4 ambitious businessmen, E.B. Gage, Frank Murphy, N.K. Fairbank, and Wallace Fairbank, saw potential where others saw only risk. Gage brought extensive mining experience. Murphy contributed his business acumen, while the Fairbanks supplied crucial financial backing. Under this new leadership, Congress didn't just revive, it thrived. The consortium implemented enhanced mining technologies, expanded operations, and drove production to unprecedented levels. As gold flowed from the depths of the Congress mine, the settlement began to take shape as a proper town, or rather, as 2 towns. One of the most fascinating aspects of Congress was its dual town structure, a physical manifestation of the social and economic hierarchies that defined mining communities of the era. The settlement was effectively split into 2 distinct areas, the mill town and the lower town. The mill town represented corporate order and control. Here stood the ore processing facilities, the company administrative headquarters, a hospital, workers' bunkhouses, executive and employee housing, the company store, water distribution point, and even an electric light plant, a remarkable luxury for a frontier settlement. This section of town was designed with industrial efficiency in mind, where every aspect of life revolved around the extraction and processing of gold. In contrast, the lower town developed more organically, stretching linearly along the canyon. This was where the independent businesses operated, catering to miners' needs and desires beyond what the company provided. The distinction between these 2 sections reflected not just physical separation but class divisions and social distinctions that defined life in Congress. Despite its remote location, Congress developed a surprisingly rich commercial ecosystem. Multiple saloons, including the notorious Red Front Saloon, served as centers for social interaction and recreation. Boarding houses and rooming houses provided accommodation for workers and visitors. The town's culinary scene reflected the diverse population, with Chinese and Mexican restaurants offering alternatives to standard American fare. Retail operations included meat markets, general merchandise stores, and dry goods establishments. Personal services like barbershops rounded out the commercial landscape. Together, these businesses created a sense of permanence and community in what might otherwise have been just a temporary work camp. The social fabric of Congress was equally diverse. Religious institutions included both Catholic and Presbyterian churches, serving different segments of the population. Educational needs were met by a 3-teacher adobe school building, unusual in its size and staffing for a mining community of this era. Perhaps most surprisingly, the town boasted a tennis court, an extraordinary luxury that spoke to the aspirations of its leadership and the unusual amenities they chose to provide. Communication with the outside world came via telegraph connections, and later, telephone infrastructure. These technological lifelines ensured that despite its physical isolation, Congress remained connected to broader economic and social developments. Transportation networks evolved over time. The Santa Fe, Prescott, and Phoenix Railroad was supposed to run directly through Congress, but a last-minute route change left the settlement 3 miles from the tracks. This deviation necessitated the creation of Congress Junction as a separate transportation hub, connected to the main settlement by stagecoach service. Water, or rather the lack of it, remained a defining challenge throughout the town's existence. The single water source at the company store was insufficient for a growing population, let alone for firefighting. Water was transported in 50-gallon whiskey barrels, laboriously moved uphill and downhill through the settlement, a cumbersome and inefficient system that would prove catastrophic when disaster struck. And strike it did. In April 1898, a major fire swept through parts of the town. While the community rebuilt, an even more destructive blaze erupted in November 1900, beginning in a rooming house behind the Red Front Saloon. This fire destroyed 2 additional saloons, 2 restaurants, and a barber shop before it was contained. These conflagrations highlighted the settlement's vulnerability and the inadequacy of its water management systems. Crime, another staple of frontier mining towns, was part of life in Congress as well. One notable incident involved a stage robbery in which perpetrators wearing feed sack masks intercepted a stage carrying 6 passengers and a driver. Interestingly, the criminals' haste led them to overlook approximately $1,000 in valuables hidden by the passengers, a considerable sum at that time. By 1905, at its peak, Congress boasted a population of approximately 500 inhabitants. The community included a diverse mix of ethnicities, with documented Chinese and Hispanic communities contributing to the cultural tapestry of the town. Occupational roles range from mining positions of various skill levels to service industry workers and professionals. But like many mining towns, Congress's prosperity was directly tied to the productivity of its primary resource. As extraction challenges increased and ore quality changed, the economic viability of the mine came into question. Market price fluctuations added to the uncertainty, and gradually the town's population began to decline. The exodus happened slowly at first, then accelerated as mining operations contracted. Businesses closed one by one, with only the most essential services remaining until the end. By the late 1930s, Congress was breathing its last as a functioning community. On August 31, 1938, nearly 50 years after its establishment, the Congress Post Office was discontinued, an official acknowledgement that the town no longer existed in any meaningful sense. Today, physical remnants of Congress are sparse but telling. 4 buildings survive in the former Milltown area, while only one roofless stone structure stands as testament to the once bustling Lower Town. Between these 2 ghost settlements lies a small cemetery where the stories of Congress's inhabitants are preserved in stone and silence. The legacy of Congress extends beyond its physical remains. As one of Arizona's significant gold producers during its operational years, the settlement contributed substantially to the territory's economic development and eventual statehood. The Congress mine represented technological innovation in extraction methods, while the town itself offered a microcosm of Western development patterns. As we stand now among the scattered ruins of Congress, with the desert slowly reclaiming what humans built, we're reminded of both the impermanence of human endeavors and the enduring impact of our collective stories. The gold miners of Congress may be long gone, but the town they built, the lives they lived, and the society they created offer valuable insights into our shared past. In the shadows of Colorado's rugged mountains lies a forgotten tale of gold, grief, and ghosts. A violinist plays hauntingly beautiful melodies on a mountainside each night, until one evening the music ends with a gunshot. A rich gold vein transforms simple miners into wealthy men overnight, and a massive mudslide buries an entire town, with some claiming they could hear a grand piano playing as the earth consumed everything in its path. Welcome to the strange and tragic history of Brownsville, Colorado, one of the West's most peculiar gold mining towns, where fortune and misfortune walked hand in hand. The 1860s saw gold fever sweep across America, drawing thousands westward with dreams of striking it rich. Among them was a prospector known simply as Brown, who in the late 1860s discovered what miners called a paying lode, a vein of gold-rich ore substantial enough to warrant serious mining operations. This discovery wasn't just another claim in Colorado's mineral-rich landscape. It was the foundation of what would become Brownsville. The mountain where he struck gold became known as Brown Mountain, and the adjacent gulch was dubbed Brown Gulch, geographic features that would later play crucial roles in the town's spectacular demise. Unlike many boom towns that sprouted overnight at the news of gold, Brownsville developed more gradually. It began in the 1870s primarily as a construction town supporting workers building the Atlantic and Pacific Tunnel. Some considered it merely a suburb of the nearby settlement of Silver Plume, though it would eventually grow to house approximately 600 residents. The lifeblood of Brownsville was its miners, with a significant population being Cornish immigrants. These skilled workers from Cornwall, England, brought generations of mining expertise to the American West. Their distinctive accents and cultural traditions earned them affectionate nicknames, Cousin Jacks for the men and Cousin Jennies for the women, reflecting their tendency to recommend their relatives for mining jobs. Brownsville consisted of a single main street dotted with modest amenities. A restaurant called the Fox and Hounds, a name nodding to the Cornish heritage, a local saloon where miners could wash away the day's dust with whiskey, approximately 12 houses, and a large boarding house known as the Lampshire Boarding House. The town also boasted an Odd Fellows Hall for community gatherings and a smelter operation for processing ore. One peculiar feature of Brownsville was its slag dump composed of ground bone from a slaughterhouse, an unusual detail that highlighted the resourceful, if sometimes strange, approaches to mining town infrastructure. Nestled at the foot of Brown Mountain and aligned with Brown Gulch, Brownsville served primarily as a residential hub for miners working at the nearby 730 mine, which sat at an elevation of 10,451 feet. The mine would become the centerpiece of both Brownsville's greatest fortunes and its ultimate destruction. The story of the 730 mine is clouded in conflicting accounts and mystery, a fitting prelude to the strange fate that would befall it. Some records claim it was discovered by an Englishman named Clifford Griffin. Others insist it was Jack McDonnell who found the deposit, later selling partial interest to Henage Griffin, who would bring his brother Clifford to Colorado. The Griffin brothers themselves were figures shrouded in rumor and speculation. Whispers circulated about their noble ancestry and the dark circumstances that had driven Clifford from England to the American frontier. The most persistent story, never confirmed but widely believed, painted a tragic portrait of Clifford Griffin. According to local legend, he had been engaged to a beautiful woman of royal lineage in England. On the night before their wedding, she was found dead in his room. The exact circumstances remained unclear, but following this heartbreaking incident, Clifford promptly departed for Colorado. If there was truth to this tale, it might explain the unusual leniency shown by British authorities. The story suggested that the British justice system of the time might have allowed a nobleman to flee rather than face the scandal of a public trial, a revealing glimpse into class dynamics of Victorian England. Whatever the truth behind their arrival, the Griffin brothers soon established themselves as significant figures in Brownsville's mining industry. Henage appointed his brother Clifford as superintendent of the 730 mine, perhaps hoping the responsibility would help him overcome his persistent melancholy. The 730 mine earned its unusual name through an innovation that revealed much about the Griffin brothers' management style. Traditional mines of the era typically required workers to begin their shifts at the crack of dawn, usually 6:30 a.m. The Griffin brothers, however, instituted a more humane 7:30 a.m. start time, earning both the gratitude of miners and a distinctive name for their operation. This small act of consideration didn't detract from the mine's productivity. Under the Griffins' management, the 730 became known for its rich gold and silver deposits. Miners reported an encouraging phenomenon. The veins actually widened as they dug deeper, a promising sign in gold mining. Before long, the Griffin brothers had become the wealthiest mine owners in the camp. Despite this professional success, Clifford Griffin remained a troubled soul. He chose to live in isolation, occupying a small cabin on Columbia Mountain rather than a more comfortable residence in town. From this remote perch, Clifford could overlook the mining operations below while maintaining his distance from the townspeople. Clifford's melancholy manifested in a peculiar ritual that became legendary throughout the area. Each evening, as darkness fell over the mountains, he would stand outside his cabin with his violin. Under the vast Colorado sky, he would play hauntingly beautiful melodies that echoed down into the gulch below. Word of these performances spread, and townspeople began to gather in the gulch each evening to listen. The mournful music floating down from the mountainside became a beloved feature of life in Brownsville, a nightly reminder of beauty amidst the harsh realities of frontier mining life. But as months passed, observant residents noticed something disturbing. Clifford had begun to excavate what appeared to be a grave in the granite mountainside near his cabin. The sight raised concerns, but no one intervened, a decision many would later regret. One evening, Clifford's violin concert proceeded as usual. The familiar melodies drifted down to the appreciative audience gathered below. But this performance ended differently, with the sharp crack of a gunshot that echoed across the mountainside. When concerned miners rushed up to Clifford's cabin, they found him dead by his own hand, his body lying in the grave he had painstakingly prepared. A suicide note requested that he be buried in this self-made tomb, revealing that he had planned this end with careful deliberation. His brother Henage, grieving but respectful of Clifford's final wishes, ensured he was laid to rest exactly as requested. 1 year later, a monument was erected on the site, a landmark still visible on the mountainside today. Henage even established a fund to ensure fresh flowers would always adorn his brother's grave, a touching tribute in the harsh mountain environment. Following these arrangements, Henage Griffin returned to England, leaving behind not only his brother's grave but also the prosperous mine that would soon play a role in destroying the town below. As the 730 mine continued operations, its success created the seeds of disaster. The mine's dump, the pile of extracted but non-valuable material, grew steadily, gradually filling Brown Gulch. This accumulation of waste material created an increasingly precarious situation above the town of Brownsville. Mine engineers installed a culvert, essentially a large drainage pipe, to allow snowmelt and rainfall to pass through the growing dump. But this engineering solution proved woefully inadequate for Colorado's mountainous climate. Spring melts and heavy rains frequently exceeded the culvert's capacity, saturating the dump materials and creating dangerous instability. The consequences began to manifest in the 1880s, when a small segment of the dump moved downhill toward Brownsville, a warning sign that went largely unheeded. Nature's reckoning came in a series of increasingly destructive slides. In June 1892, a second larger slide buried homes, the Brownsville Hall, and even an occupied saloon, though fortunately no lives were lost. The situation deteriorated dramatically on June 15, 1895, when the 730 dump collapsed completely. The massive flow of saturated material destroyed the Lampshire boarding house, further erasing Brownsville from the map. A fourth slide later that same year proved even more severe. This rock slide included not just loose material, but mine buildings themselves. Clifford Griffin's former cabin, the blacksmith shop, and the ore house all joined the destructive flow downhill, though it stopped just short of the valuable mill. The final, catastrophic slide occurred in June 1912. This time, warning sounds, described as rumbling and creaking, provided enough alert for residents to evacuate. When the earth finally moved, it was complete and devastating. The remaining hotel with its grand piano, miners' cottages with all their possessions, and even 2 railroad cars loaded with granite were consumed by the unstoppable flow of mud and rock. As with many mining disasters, the Brownsville slides generated their own folklore. Some claimed they could hear piano music during the slow-moving 1912 mudslide, the hotel's grand piano supposedly playing eerie notes as it was carried along in the flow of earth. Others spread unfounded rumors about miners trapped beneath the mud or an entire passenger train buried in the debris. These stories, while unlikely to be true, speak to the profound impact the disaster had on the collective imagination of Colorado's mining communities. The dramatic end of Brownsville served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of inadequate engineering and nature's ultimate power over human endeavors. Today, Brownsville exists only as a rounded mound along Highway 40. The once thriving gold mining community has been reduced to a large rock pile approximately 1.5 miles west of Silver Plume, with a deep pit visible across the road, physical remnants that give little hint of the dramatic human story that unfolded there. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for another Southwest Gold story. Check out my large catalog of Southwest videos and playlists on historical tales, legends, lost gold stories, and adult bedtime stories. If you like a certain image from my videos, tell me in comments and give timestamp. Happy trails. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.